There you go. It's been a very boring day with blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Here with Mark Davis, the lawyer of choice for the people fighting the government, myself included, and a man with a very interesting life story. You grew up in Sydney?
No, Melbourne boy.
Melbourne?
Yes, very much Melbourne boy. Yeah.
You still like Melbourne?
I still see myself as a Melbourne guy. Melbourne is my milieu, you know.
Yeah, that's your thing, yeah?
Yeah, I don't jog, I don't surf, I just sort of...
You go hang out in cafes?
Nerdy cafe things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do your parents do?
Oh, they did. They were... My dad was he worked for a big American company, sort of, funnily enough, when I reflected on later, really travelled all his life. He'd sort of go off for a month, come back, South America and Asia. Middle-class family, outer suburbs. My mum was a very astute sort of businesswoman, really, when no one was. When women sort of didn't do it, she always had her own businesses. She was a designer, decorator. She had those sort of businesses. When it was freakishly rare. When my mother did it, freakishly rare. She was pretty
fantastic.
Cool. Yeah.
And what did you want to be when you were 7?
7, I wanted to be a vet. 18, I wanted to be on Four Corners.
Did you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely, Four Corners.
It was rocking, was it? Yeah. Totally. They say that's a great freedom to have. One of your great forebears, John Eliot, he said that. He knew what he wanted to be from a very young age.
Yeah.
And that certainly allows you to,
Well, Four Corners, it's an iconic program for a very good reason. I mean, it was apparent to me as a teenager that this was...
I remember them, even when I was like a little kid, 10, at boarding school, I knew what the music was.
Yeah.
You could hear it coming from the boarding masters.
It was important, right? Outstanding journalism.
Yeah.
It's always had that. So,
Vietnam era and things like that, and breaking stories. So, I think that's... well, you've done that, but you didn't just do that, and now you've made a career in the law. But actually, before you went in the law, tell me what were your favourite stories in journalism?
Oh, look, I had so many, but, in the broad themes, Afghanistan which drew me to you, really. Afghanistan was my favourite sort of country topic issue. Massoud, who became something of a hero to me. He led he fought the Russians. He was never a lackey of the Americans. So he was always this independent man that remained inside, never left Afghanistan through the entire sort of Russian occupation. And then was the last man standing against the Taliban, trapped in the Panjshir Valley.
Quite remarkable. You must have had some sort of a godlike quality, because the Russians could not. They
couldn't get him. But sometimes you meet someone that actually do have some outstanding quality that is apparent immediately. That was Massoud.
Yeah.
So he changed my mind. People frequently disparage anyone who's armed as a warlord. Changed my mind completely. I was, warlord or not, he's on the side of righteousness as far as I was concerned. And to watch him, to see the sense of power that he gave to people. I mean, he's now a cult-like figure, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit hard to see the man through the gumph. But it was extraordinary to watch him when people were in Kabul, surrounded by the Taliban. No one had any doubt what was going to happen if the Taliban got through. And then pushed out into a little valley, and the last of the Afghan intellectuals clung to Massoud. If he was there, everyone was calm. It was just amazing to see.
I heard
if he was not there, if he was gone somewhere else, there would be panic in the city or panic in Panjshir. Massoud come back, everyone's fine. Well, whatever Massoud did, everyone was fine. Right?
And you were there for that. It was also a very dangerous time to be a journalist.
Well, it was incredibly dangerous, but. I did a lot of dangerous things, but I also had that feeling. I'm with Massoud.
That's right. Confidence is important.
I'm fine.
And even if you're not with Massoud, you can pretend to be with Massoud. That's what I used in Africa. That's right. You're confident. But still, I take my hat off to you, because it was a pretty dangerous time. Helicopters fly out of the sky. Even the CIA had trouble, getting there, getting supplies there, and they reading the story of that 20 years, it was very, very tough times. Yeah.
I did a lot of dangerous work, but I take danger getting into a place. I like to get into a place and then do my work, So I wasn't one of those guys that just wanted to be
dodging bullets.
Dodging bullets, right? I'd take danger, get in somewhere, do the story, get out.
No, well, they don't tend to last very long, is it? You and I know a lot of them.
Yeah.
There, but yeah, the interesting story. I was the same. That's why I wanted to go in and meet the Taliban in 2099. Because I wanted to, it was relatively dangerous going in there. Not many Westerners had done. You didn't know how they were going to be received, whether they'd suddenly change their attitude and you'd end up. I always thought it'd be the biggest shame to be a hostage, and to kind of like be paraded on TV. And I thought, what a failure. But luckily that didn't happen. But I wanted to go in. Yeah, I wasn't interested in. Where the bullets flying and things like that. But I wanted to sit down with them and to meet them as well. It gives that fascination.
It was my first big hit story. I got the first story on the Taliban. People had heard about them, right? So what is it, 95? No?
Yeah, when rumours were running riot.
This mysterious group, right? Yeah. Oh, that sounds amazing. I didn't quite realise they were lunatics. I just thought they were sort of reluctant to be filmed. No one had, I staggered into Kandahar, first came out with the first report. I didn't realise they was psychotically opposed to being filmed. I realised when I got there, but anyway, that was my first big story.
Well, I mean, they're the product of 20 years of terrible things happening. We didn't even, Kandahar was the one place we didn't get to because even our guide said it's, they might kill you because they just, are jumping and they don't know whether you're funnily enough, we almost had more danger in Kabul because we ran into what we didn't know, we'd never heard of at the time, Al-Qaeda, Arabs, who thought we were some sort of, US hit squad because we had short hair and equipment.
And you were former soldiers. So
And the guy came in. I like to believe it was Khalid, Sheikh Mohammed, because he was kind of fat and he had this New Jersey accent and he was pointing his AK at me. He was like shaking. At the time, I didn't take him seriously. In fact, it was one of my big failures as a security guard. I was like, he was never going to shoot us. But he might. It turns out maybe he was very dangerous. But yeah, they said, and even the Afghans didn't like them because they just had the money. But they said, don't go to Kandahar. They said, it's too dangerous. And I found that quite surprising because we've been everywhere else, but there was obviously a different atmosphere down there.
That was the epicentre. Yeah.
I didn't mind this. I meant to say that I bought into the idea that they fought the warlord. They fought the most odious of the warlords.
They were kind of cool as well. I shouldn't just completely shitbag them. Right? They were kind of cool, but no, I didn't know any of this, right? When I'm going in,
And I met a British guy who had been with them, and he was one of the few people to say the only way we're going to get out of this is to talk to them.
They were at least disciplined, right? So
Well, I think the story was real about the fact that Mullah Omar came to power. He just came off the mountain one day, and they'd heard of another 12-year-old twins had been raped and killed by the local war, and he just said enough's enough. And they went and hung the guy from his own tank barrel with a tiny percentage of the force of the warlord, and that's what people wanted to see.
That's what I was following. They'd just done that.
Yeah,
I was coming up the road, piecing that story together, and
people were just so sick of every street corner, somebody you're getting a gun and you become your warlord, and you charge people $5 for going past, and if the daughter was pretty, you'd take them away, and they were just the average person we met were pretty happy that they would disarm, and we actually ran into the Ministry of Vice and Virtue because they came to wake us up in the middle of the night to make us pray, and they when they saw us with our pale skin and crappy beards, they were like, "Oh, don't worry, you don't have to." They were just laughing. They'd never seen white whale bodies before. And they didn't kind of murder us or anything. They just laughed. They knew they were Christians, and they had eradicated the poppy simply because it was un-Islamic, and that cost them a lot of money to do that. And so they were, and they said to us, we were there just before they blew up the Buddhas, and they were like, well, our children are starving. There'd been a famine, and they were incensed that the Japanese would give them unlimited money to fix the Buddhas, but no money to feed Afghan children, and that kind of. I could see why that stuck in their throat, kind of thing. But I guess as a soldier, I could see that they were just an amateur bunch of soldiers, and they were certainly probably.
I resented them because they smashed my camera to pieces.
Well,
I never forgave them.
Well, that's fair enough. They didn't do that to us. Maybe I won them over. They showed us around the whole place, and like any group of soldiers, there was good, there was bad, and there was the dumb. But there was a group of three of them. One of them, he had a missing foot with a prosthetic leg, and I've always wondered whether he became more famous later on, and he lost it fighting for the airport above Kabul, and in one of the last battles, and then. One of them you could tell was very dodgy, and one of them was just a bit stupid, I think. But and I guess in any group, you're always going to have that. But we met the Minister of Health, who was a medical doctor, who seemed to try to do his best. But anyway, it's and what else? What was your best moment?
Loads of. I had a lot of scoops, I guess, but I would go to places that I thought were important. I was lucky. I don't think people have that luck
a little bit of luck
anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So I just got myself into a position where I pretty much chose the stories I wanted to do. Yeah. I wasn't being forced into just cover something that was a big story at the time. So West Papua, so East Timor was important to me. That was while the Indonesians were there, and then in the aftermath of that, so I covered that. West Papua has been a story that I've consistently done. These are stories that aren't easily told or aren't frequently told, so I was always attracted to those stories. So rather than, the story of the year, I'd sort of go for things that.
Do you think West Papua is ever going to be told properly? I know it's a very contentious point with a lot of people.
Well, it's not going to be told properly now. I mean, say in the Southern Highlands, which is the last really remote part of West Papua, indeed, the last remote part of the planet. 18 months ago, they started firing upon the villages there. They're, traditional villages. There's no roads up there. There's no road into the highlands. There will be soon. But they started firing phosphorus rounds upon villagers who they regarded as, supporting the OPM. And since that time, I did a story, like a print story on it. Some people sent me the photographs of the shells and the burns, and some unexploded ordnance had the codes on it, which we could trace back to, Belgium. But since that time, so this is a huge part of West Papua, not a single journalist has been able to get in, not a single NGO, and including West Papuan ones. So that is, not a single person has been able to get into this entire range that has been under assault from the Indonesian military in 18 months. So it shows you there are still parts of the world that are completely untold, and how effective it is to just close it down. It's very effective.
Makes one and you say it very stoic way, but you can just imagine the screaming of those.
Of the children and the villagers.
The white phosphorus burning from one side of the body to the other.
Yes. In fact, there was one guy who sent me was sending me photos of a man who was dying of phosphorus burns. They have mobile phones now, right? So this is incredible. He's getting these photos out to me, dying in a hut with extensive phosphorus burns down his entire side, and they were trying to get a medic in, some form of medic in, or medicine to him, or painkillers to him. No one could get through. And so you can imagine trying to contact people. There's a guy here he is. You can't tell the Indonesians.
It's pretty obscene, and what you see Hollywood movies where either based on another planet or here where heroic people defend these tribal people, and everybody cheers, and yet it's happening for real.
It's still happening.
Nobody gives a shit.
It's the last gasp of tribal society, and it's being exterminated as brutally as we now are concerned about something from 1850.
Yeah.
It's the same, and it's all for the same reasons. It's for gold. It's for land. It's for logs. Same deal.
Worth killing people just for fucking time board.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And no one's saying anything. That's one of the most disgusting things. Okay, maybe the Indonesians have answers, but let's hear them. Not just pretend that it's not happening.
That's right.
Anyway, you make the breach to jump to law. You've done everything you could do?
Oh, no. Well, I would have stayed. Everything. The media had changed so dramatically. Dateline came to an end. They kept the brand, but, that style of program finished. And I could just see that it wasn't coming back. There was...
I can relate to that. I mean, I had law degrees, but I was never a lawyer until late in life, even though I had law degrees. So yeah, did you did you have second thoughts? Were people saying you're crazy? What do you want to do that?
It was a bit crazy, but I found it really invigorating, and I found it not so dissimilar. It's very much compiling a large amount of material, and presenting it in a compelling way and a narrative. Like you're actually plucking out.
Well, that's one of the reasons that attracted you to me. In my case, is you got from the beginning, and a lot of lawyers don't, that what goes on outside the court, public opinion is probably 50% as important, and that doesn't come naturally. You have to be able to manage that in a certain way, and being able to handle life is important. You get some people who know a lot about the law, but that's not going to help you if that's the only point you win on. There's some very crusty legal point, so that's it's holistic, to use the wanky words, but there's a holistic to running a case.
Do you know who I work for? So I finished SBS 2015, I had to get, I had to do a year of working. I was a lawyer when I was young, but was mostly sort of corporate, bored the hell out of me.
Oh, you had a law degree too, so you got your law degree.
Oh yeah, I had it like 1,000 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And did it for 2 years, sort of finance, corporate, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I was going to try and get myself killed might be a better
there we go.
idea. So I took off for 20 years to get myself killed, right? But I still had the
there you go. That's very similar.
And I went back to who I work for to reinvigorate my qualifications. Bernard Collaery.
Oh, bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Bullshit,
yeah. I didn't like most lawyers. Who's a good lawyer? Oh, that guy, Bernard Collaery.
The law is my life. Professing the law and bringing justice is my life. People say, when are you going to retire? I say, well, I'll drop dead in court maybe. And I intend to see out my life pursuing justice and the rule of law.
Just been raided by...
How funny is that? After he'd been raided?
It was just after he'd been raided. I thought, he's an interesting bloke. And so, because he was raided and then it went quiet, right? They didn't charge him for 4 years. They raided him and didn't charge him.
They just stopped him going to the Hague.
So he was doing the Hague and he was East Timor, and I thought, he's a cool guy, Bernard Collaery. So I went and did a year with Bernard.
But it's funny how circular things go, hey?
Yeah.
Well, that's gone well now that Bernard's charges have been dropped. But you couldn't have picked a better lawyer to look at.
No, he's great. He's
but it's also that's worked well with me. And I can see that it's really fitting together. Now you've got the Blockade Australia people, and you had Kristo Langker. That was a high-profile case.
Yeah.
And I found, and other people will find very heartening, when you're facing the government, you really don't. Well, you might, you obviously put bravado on in public, but some part of you thinks you just can't win.
They feel unwinnable. It felt unwinnable with you when we first met. Yeah. It's unwinnable.
Because it's overwhelming.
Yes.
And there's just every day, even if it's just paperwork.
They kill you
you need to send this by this, send that by this, send that by that.
Yeah.
And even if it's blatantly wrong. You saw that with that, Detective Inspector McQueen. They can make stuff up, which might only be a little bit of an exaggeration, but you struggle to fight against small exaggeration after small exaggeration on your own. And I found it very heartening when you got up with Kristo Langker, because it showed you that the machine could be beaten.
Yes. If you've got enough resources.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy.
Kristo was lucky on a couple of things. He was lucky he got us, I'd like to think, but he was lucky that people backed him.
Yeah.
And he got the money. Frankly, he got the money. So we could subpoena, we could take every break we could get in a court, seek another hearing, seek details, push back. Wasn't just, let's get it to a courtroom and,
you're right.
He would have been prosecuted. He would have been prosecuted. Convicted.
Absolutely.
On that, right? We've got police
Lucky
evidence.
he wasn't shot. I mean, that's the sort of thing that can happen.
Yeah.
And then after that fact, he just said, if he was an unlikable bloke, a bit like the other guy you mentioned up at the eastern suburbs school, who they were harassing about, saying that some sort of charge, the same sort of fixated person. Like if they'd shot him, he would have just died as some dangerous person.
That's right. That's right.
And that's the scary thing. We are well resourced, and I've got a little post-it note up on there just to remind myself of the people, the whistleblowers, people like Lance Collins, who I think you also worked for, and you. Someone I never heard of called Merv, someone or other, who died, but people who come before us who weren't so lucky.
Yeah.
Who ended up...
I've had whistleblowers all my career, like obviously as a journalist, and so it's quite nice for me now to be able to do it, to defend them as a lawyer. Whistleblowers very rarely have happy endings.
No.
Very rarely have happy endings. And, the psychological toll, even though there are people that will support you, ultimately you're alone. And when the day comes that you've lost your job, or you've been prosecuted or convicted, you're very alone.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of Australia, really, because without people like you, people like me end up dead, and many more people are going to come after us that are going to need your services. And I'm really grateful. So thank you.
Proud to do it.
So far, so good, and we're grateful to have you, Jake. Yes. You're saying we've done enough.